In this video, I'm going to show you 20 of the most ridiculously game-breaking tricks in Skyrim, from builds that are just ludicrously overpowered to getting your hands on infinite golden gear from the very beginning of the game. Let's start with the early game golden gear part, and for this, we're going to use an unbelievably simple trick that can get you some seriously overpowered items and an enormous pile of gold before you even hit level 2. Basically, when Bethesda designed merchants in Skyrim, they, for whatever reason, chose to store their shop inventories in a cute little chest buried nearby, but much like an incompetent serial killer, they did not bury them deep enough. Therefore, if you know where to look, you can just roll up on these chests and help yourself to what's inside. And hilariously, it doesn't even count as stealing. There are a number of these chests to be found in Skyrim, and while some of them require clipping through walls and other such nonsense, and we'll be getting to one of those in trick number 3 as it does allow us to do something extra special, there are also at least 3 chests that you can literally just loot from above ground providing you know where to look. The first one can be found outside of Solitude, buried underneath this grassy patch just outside the main gate. You'll need to crouch down to access it, and as you can see, it's absolutely jam-packed with goodies and gold. Then there's a second merchant chest that you can find just outside of Markarth, next to this wall that you can see just in front of me, and you just need to go around the other side of the wall and you should easily be able to locate the chest right here. And finally, you have the Dawnstar merchant chest, which can be found just outside the Ironbreaker mine, which is pretty much within the town of Dawnstar, as you can see here, and the chest can be found next to this rock formation. You'll notice that each of these chests offers a wealth of weapons, armor and consumables, as well as a healthy pile of gold, which is going to give you a massive head start in the early game. It's also worth noting that these 3 chests are actually attached to the Khajiit caravans that stop in each location, but we'll get to the relevance of that in trick number 3. But to take advantage of the infinite wealth glitch that we're going to share in trick number 3, we first need to learn trick number 2. And that is the vendor reset trick, and it's pretty much as simple as it gets. As you probably know, vendors in Skyrim have a limited amount of gold available to buy your goods, which can be limiting when you start to discover valuable items or craft valuable potions, for example. And it's especially limiting if you watch this video all the way through, as you're effectively going to be a walking treasure chest. However, if you're not above exploiting a simple glitch, then you can give vendors an infinite amount of gold. All you need to do is sell enough items to bring the vendor's gold down to 0, hit quick save, punch them in the face, and then quickly reload. And just like that, their gold will be fully replenished. Then you just rinse and repeat. I know it's utter madness that this has never been patched, but there you have it. But why should the vendor be infinitely wealthy when your wealth is limited by the items that you have available to sell? Well, the answer is you don't have to be, and you can combine tricks 1 and 2 to give yourself unlimited gold. This can be achieved in a couple of ways, but my favourite one involves one particular chest that sits underneath the Skyforge in Whiterun. For this one, you're going to need to progress the main story just a tiny bit, as you're going to need the first dragon shout. Once you have that, what you're going to need to do is make your way over to this house that's just a short distance from the big circular fountain area in the middle of Whiterun. And then when you get there, you need to approach this window. As you walk into the window, you're going to see that you start to phase underground. Weird, I know. Once you're fully underground, you're going to need to turn right, and then you're going to need to follow the path that I'm taking until you get to this little grassy mound that you're then going to need to climb up and then exit Whiterun through the gap to your left. You'll then need to walk around Whiterun following the route that I'm taking. The reason for this is that if you get too close to the wall in certain areas, you're going to get stuck, but the path I'm taking is totally safe, as you can see. Soon enough, you'll see the Skyforge, and you just need to approach this section of the rocks and walk straight through it. Then, from underneath the Skyforge, you can edge up to the chest and loot it, which already gives you a nice little early game boost to your resources. However, this chest has a lot more to offer than just that. Basically, after looting the chest, you can get just beneath this grindstone that you can see above me now, and perform the vendor reset trick on Yerland by hitting quick save, using the Unrelenting Force dragon shout on him, and then hitting quick load. If he's using other equipment, you're just going to need to wait an hour or so until he walks back over to the grindstone, and if it's night, you're going to have to wait until the morning until Yerland comes back to work. Once you perform the vendor reset trick, there is one more step, and that's that you need to speak to Yerland and ask him what he has for sale, as this is going to reset his gold. But unlike with the other vendors, you can now go directly back to his chest and loot that gold. And now you can probably see where I'm going with this one. You can simply rinse and repeat that process for infinite gold, making you rich enough to visit the Cloud District as often as you like, and Nazim can suck a lemon. Interestingly, this trick also works with the Khajiit caravan chests, and in that case doesn't involve clipping underground or using a dragon shout. You can just use a simple melee hit to perform the vendor reset trick, but only if the caravan is at that location at that time. Markarth is the best option for this because that's where the vendor is closest to the chest, so you're not having to run a long distance for each reset. But obviously the limitation is that the caravan will move on after a while and you'll continually have to use the wait function to reset it, making it a bit less efficient than the Skyforge once you've made that initial effort to get underground. However, both are very easy ways to get very, very rich. Of course, this constant resetting of merchant chests can get pretty boring pretty quickly, so let's look at another way to exploit the vendor reset to make a dishonest living. And this time, we're going to be utilising good old Lydia as our item duplication mule, though you can use any follower that you like. All you need to do for this one is drop a bunch of items on the floor next to the gate right here in Whiterun, ask your follower to pick them up, and then exit through the main gate straight away. When you re-enter, you're going to find that your items are still on the floor, but have also been duplicated into your follower's inventory. It's as simple as that. It's worth noting that this won't work for unique items, and also that it's worth duplicating items with a favourable weight to value ratio so that you don't instantly over-encumber yourself by duplicating a load of heavy armour, for instance. Then, once you've done this, all you need to do is flog it at the nearby vendor, and of course use the vendor reset trick to make sure they have the cash on hand to enable this shady enterprise of yours. Okay, so you're filthy rich at this point. Oh, and for those inevitable comments of, actually, just open the console and type player.add item FFFF 1,000,000. Actually, well, first, no one asked you. Secondly, it won't work for console players. And thirdly, you're a killjoy and no one asked you, so shut up. Anyway, speaking of being over-encumbered, let's talk about how you're going to carry all of your newfound riches, because at this point you're probably spending your money with the same level of financial planning as a recent lottery winner, and are most likely drowning in various items that I'm reliably informed are known as bling. Translation, you're carrying a lot of stuff and are moving at a snail's pace due to over-encumbrance. So let's fix that, and I've got two methods for you. One powerful, one ridiculously powerful. Firstly, you can utilize a glitch that gives your followers unlimited inventory capacity. All you need to do is, rather than trading them items in the normal fashion, simply drop them on the floor and ask your follower to pick them up. For whatever reason, this completely bypasses your follower's inventory capacity and effectively makes them a bottomless bag. However, this process can get pretty tedious, constantly having to direct your follower to pick up items, so I'd recommend method number 2 instead, as while this one does require a bit more investment, it's also the key to unlocking much more than an unlimited inventory. And I am of course talking about the famous Fortify Restoration loop. And buckle up for this one, as it's easily the most broken glitch in Skyrim. Here's how it works. Firstly, you need to make yourself a set of Fortify Alchemy gear by getting hold of a Fortify Alchemy item such as Muri's Ring or the Ring of Pure Mixtures, and then disenchanting that item so that you can enchant its effect onto a set of your own gear. Then, with your Fortify Alchemy gear equipped, you'll need to approach an alchemy station and make a Fortify Restoration potion, using any 2 Fortify Restoration ingredients, for example Abyssinian Longfin and Cyrodiilic Spadetail. And of course, if you're struggling to get enough of these ingredients, then you can always use the duplication glitch from trick number 4. Once you've created your Fortify Restoration potion, you'll need to unequip your Fortify Alchemy gear and drink the potion. Then you need to re-equip your gear and repeat this process around 10 times. It sounds very weird, but basically, drinking the Restoration Potion and stacking your Fortify Restoration effect, for whatever reason, glitches the Fortify Alchemy multiplier provided by your gear, and therefore causes the multipliers of the potions you make to go through the roof. You'll complete this loop 8, 9, maybe 10 times. You'll know when you've gone too far because you'll start to get negative multipliers. There's a little bit of trial and error, so keep saving the game as you go. This is actually doubly important to keep saving the game because another thing it will do if you go too far is completely crash out. But anyway, the end result is going to be potions with absolutely ludicrous multipliers, as you can see on the screen right now. So let's talk about some different ways in which you can take advantage of that, starting with the infinite carry capacity ring that I mentioned at the beginning of this point. Well, once the multiplier is where you want it to be, then stop creating Fortify Restoration potions and create a Fortify Enchanting potion. Then drink the potion, step over to the enchanting station, and then use the station to apply a Fortify Carry enchantment to a ring. A guaranteed item that you can disenchant for this effect is the Charmed Necklace, by the way. And you can see by the multiplier on this ring that I've just created, you will never need to think about inventory management ever again. And of course, you could use this same method to just make a bunch of stupidly overpowered fortified carry potions if you don't want to use a ring slot purely for inventory space. However, being down a ring slot won't really cause you a great deal of issues if you're using the Fortify Restoration loop, as creating an unlimited carry capacity ring is really just the tip of the iceberg here. And you can also use this exploit to make utterly game-breaking equipment. For example, you can enchant a sword like I'm doing here, and it will be more than powerful enough to kill any enemy in the game with a single hit, as you can see in the footage right now. Or for example, you could create a piece of armor that will effectively make you invulnerable, or a combination of all of that with a bunch of enchants that basically turn you into a god. I won't go through everything you can do with the Fortify Restoration loop, as we'd be here all day, but I'll give you just one more trick that is just absurdly broken, and that's using Destruction Cloaks to wipe out everything in sight or even out of sight with a single activation. All you need to do is use your Fortify Alchemy loop to create a overpowered Fortify Destruction potion, then get your hands on the Flame Cloak spell that can be found to the east of Dawnstar at this location on the map. Then you just need to drink the potion, activate the Flame Cloak spell, and watch everything around you melt. And as you can see from the footage, it's just ridiculously broken. What's hilarious about this one is that rather than just buffing the damage of the spell, when you use the Fortify Restoration loop to create a Fortified Destruction potion, it also increases its range, and it even travels through walls, meaning that in a dungeon, literally everything is dead before you even see it, resulting in your Flame Cloak cast effectively becoming a button to activate God mode. Now, obviously, this completely trivializes the game, and clearly you're going to get to the point where the numbers just become meaningless as you're this unkillable god who one-shots absolutely everything. But we're just having fun with this video, and you can watch my other content for some more honorable approaches to the game, let's say. Oh, and one final thing I will add with regards to the Fortify Restoration loop is that the effect of the Restoration potions is temporary. So if you want to lock it in, then make sure you create a supercharged piece of Fortify Alchemy gear whilst you're under the temporary effects of the Fortify Restoration loop, because that's going to lock it in rather than you having to repeat the whole process next time you want to make any of these game-breaking potions. However, you don't have to completely break the game. There's also a bit of a middle ground that will give you some tricks that make clever use of mechanics that result in extremely powerful builds, but without using exploits that basically turn you into a god, such as the one we just covered. So in the next few tips, I'm going to offer you some options to do just that, and they also require some level of investment, so it feels a lot more like you actually earned that power rather than just simply cheating. The first one I want to cover is how you can give your character a powerful permanent buff by pairing Vampirism with the Necromage perk. Basically, what you need to do is become a vampire, either via Serana or by contracting the disease from a random vampire, and I'll link a video that shows you how to do that in the description down below. And then secondly, you're going to need to get your restoration skill to level 70 in order to unlock the Necromage perk. Now, what Necromage does is boost all spells against undead, and since vampires count as undead, and you are at this point a vampire, then any positive magic effect on you is going to be 25% stronger and last 50% longer. And this doesn't just cover spells cast on yourself, but it also includes enchantments, potion effects, and even standing stone bonuses. And as you can imagine, this gets stupidly strong once you start stacking up all of the different types of magical buffs available in the game, and if you pair it with some of the tips we've already used, you can see how it can become pretty damn overpowered. You can also take this build to the next level by also making yourself 100% immune to spell damage, which again is just flat out busted, but isn't cheating, it's a normal mechanic in the game. It's not even that hard to do either, you've basically done most of the work by becoming a vampire necromage in the first place. All you need to do after that is activate the Atronach Standing Stone for 50% spell absorption, take the Atronach perk from the Alteration skill tree for a further 30%, and then let your Necromage powers automatically increase each of these bonuses by a further 25% for a grand total of 100% spell absorption. And at this point you have completely removed a damage type from the game, and you're going to make any mages or dragons look like absolute losers. The Fortify Resto loop would clearly let you do this with a single item, but like I said, these builds are aiming to give you a middle ground, allowing you to become exceptionally powerful, but still able to play and enjoy the game relatively normally. Another stupidly broken build that again technically isn't even cheating, but sure as hell feels like it, is the Infinite Magicka Spell Stagger build, in which you can completely stagger lock enemies, leaving them utterly unable to fight back. Here's how you do it. Firstly, you're going to need the Infinite Magicka component, which again you could easily achieve with the Fortify Restoration loop, but we're trying to avoid that for these builds. So instead, what you're going to need to do is raise your enchanting skill all the way to level 100, and then invest 5 points in the Enchanter perk and 1 point into the Insightful Enchanter perk. You'll then need to get 4 pieces of kit, helmet, chest, ring and necklace, and enchant them with a Fortified Destruction 25% effect. Which, by the way, is the reason you need 100 enchanting, otherwise your enchants aren't going to be as powerful as 25%. Then you just need to throw on these 4 pieces of equipment and your destruction spells will no longer cost any magicka whatsoever. After this, all you need to do is get your destruction skill to level 40, which will be very easy when you're not burning through any magicka, and unlock a perk called Impact within the destruction skill tree, and this will make the majority of your destruction spells stagger your opponent when dual casting. As I said, this can get ridiculously broken, as if you set it up correctly and dual cast projectiles such as firebolts, ice spikes, lightning bolts, then you'll be guaranteed to stagger the target on hit, making them utterly unable to respond. And due to your Fortified Destruction gear, you have Infinite Magicka, which means you can infinitely stagger lock those opponents. It's basically God mode for any 1v1 fight without even cheating. If you want the melee version of this, then you can achieve it with the Shield Stagger effect. All you need to do to pull this off, believe it or not, is a few bowls of good old hearty vegetable soup. Well, and some skill in block. Vegetable soup grants you 1 point of stamina per second for 720 seconds, which doesn't sound like anything crazy on paper. However, you only actually need 1 point of stamina to perform a shield bash, and what this soup does is basically never let you reach 0 stamina, it just keeps ticking up to 1 stamina. So even though it looks like you've run out of stamina, you'll find that you can continue to shield bash indefinitely. And what's so great about this? Well, if you have a high block skill, or you're just really good at timing your bash with enemy swings, then you'll be pretty much guaranteed to stagger the enemy with every single bash. So you can either just chain bashes with normal attacks, or just put some points into the Deadly Bash perk to buff the damage of the shield bash itself, and then just slowly chip away at the enemy's health whilst they are completely stagger locked and unable to respond. As with Spell Stagger, you won't be able to pull it off on entire hordes of enemies, but for any 1v1, including dragons, you'll be practically unkillable once you reach melee range. And finally, one last sneaky little trick that will allow you to put out insane levels of damage without exploiting the Fortify Restoration loop can be found in the way that Stalrim weapons interact with the Chaos Damage enchantment. Basically, Stalrim weapons by default boost frost-based enchantments by 25%, but for whatever reason, when it comes to chaos damage, which applies frost, fire and shock damage, it's not just the frost, but all of these damage types that are boosted when applied to a Stalrim weapon. Then if you add the augmented flame, frost and shock perks from the destruction tree, which individually boost the damage of each of these elements, you end up with a pretty absurd multiplier that results in enemies simply melting in front of you. It's almost comical, and it's not, again, cheating at all. On top of that, if you have 100 enchanting skill, then you can even apply a second enchantment that will also benefit from this multiplier, which is just going to make the weapon even more ridiculous. If you don't have the Chaos Enchantment yet, then you can get it by looting and disenchanting the Champion's Cudgel, which comes from General Folks Carius at the end of the March of the Dead quest on Solstheim. Of course, it's not just about weapons, and you certainly don't want to have all the gear and no idea, much like a middle-aged man who just got into cycling with a £20,000 bike and the tightest lycra money can buy. No, that would be embarrassing for everyone involved, so let's avoid this situation by talking about how you can level some of your skills insanely fast. And let's start with good old destruction magic. To level destruction to 100 pretty much instantly, you're firstly going to need to get yourself a set of fortified destruction gear so that you can reduce the cost of your destruction magic spells to 0, as explained in trick number 11. Or alternatively, you just need to have a high enough magicka pool to be able to cast the Unbounded Storm spell, as that's the spell we're going to be using for this trick, which by the way you can loot from Hobbs Fall Cave to the west of Winterhold. Then once you've picked up and learned the spell, you're going to need to travel to one end of the map, start dual casting the Unbound Storms spell, and then whilst you're still casting it, travel as far as you can to the other side of the map. Then, as you can see here, when you arrive, your destruction skill will be at level 100 from a single cast. For alteration, you can do basically the same thing. Firstly, you need to get yourself a set of fortified alteration gear, as explained again in trick number 11, to enable free alteration casts. Or alternatively, you need to just have enough magicka to cast the telekinesis spell, which you can get either by looting it from Wrenwater Den to the northwest of Riften, or buying it from Tolfdir at the College of Winterhold. Once you have the telekinesis spell, travel to one side of the map and then dual cast telekinesis on an item. Then, while still holding that cast, fast travel all the way across the map again to reach level 100 in a single cast. There's also a neat little trick for illusion, which is not quite as fast as the previous two, but it's still really quite broken. And once again, it would be beneficial to get yourself a full set of fortified illusion gear before you start, this time not because you won't have enough magicka to cast the spell that we're using, but because you're going to be spam casting it, and if you have infinite mana, it's just going to be a lot easier. You're not going to have to wait or use magicka potions to regenerate your magicka. The spell in question is the Muffle spell, which you can buy from Farengar in Whiterun, and all you need to do is run around constantly casting this spell whilst you go about your normal business, until the point you reach level 100 in illusion. It's not even an exploit, I just don't think the developers really thought it through, and it's close to 0 extra effort on your part to get an otherwise slow to level skill to level 100 extremely easily. Similarly, you can grab a set of fortified conjuration gear and just spam Soul Trap, a spell that's also available from Farengar in Whiterun, on an already dead body until you hit conjuration level 100. Again, I think it's just something the devs overlooked and then just never bothered to patch, but it's a crazy easy way to get conjuration maxed out. Now, of course, this one is about as boring as it gets, as you're just stuck standing in a single location spamming a spell over and over, so clearly you'll want some second monitor content. And of course, you can subscribe to my channel for plenty of that. See what I did there? Another skill that you can level to 100 pretty much instantly if you've already abused the Fortify Restoration loop is Speech. And the way you do this is to simply take one of the items that you've created using that Fortify Restoration loop. It could be one of the potions, or it could be, say, a sword that you've created, and then just sell it to a vendor, and you will instantly hit level 100. And this is because the value of items created with the Fortify Restoration loop is just absolutely ridiculous. And the speech experience that you gain when you sell an item is based on the value of the item itself. And by the way, it doesn't matter that the vendor can't afford the item. They're never realistically going to be able to, unless you've used some other kind of mod or exploit. But it's not an issue at all because the experience you gain is based on the value of the item rather than the amount that the vendor actually buys it for. Finally, when it comes to skills, there's just one more little trick I want to throw in there, and that's the fact that you can train at certain trainers absolutely free of charge. This is due to the fact that certain trainers can become your followers, and of course you can access your followers' inventories. So if you pay a trainer who is also your follower for training, then you can immediately open their inventory afterwards and take the gold right back. Clearly this isn't an intentional feature, but they never bothered to patch it either, so I guess it's fair game. Speaking of patching it though, I will warn you that the unofficial Skyrim patch does remove your ability to do this, and to be honest that's probably the case for half the tricks in this list, so if any of them aren't working, then I'd consider having a look at that mod first. There are techniques for leveling other skills quickly, but they don't feel quite so broken, and they're more grindy in nature, such as sneak attacking rail off at the start of the tutorial to power level sneak, for example, or just letting a giant constantly hit you whilst you level block, armor, and restoration. I'll link my skill leveling guide if you want to know more about that, but this video is really about breaking things. So let's break one more for the road, and road is appropriate in this case as we're going to be breaking our horse. But before you pick up the phone to Peter, no horses were harmed in the production of this video. No, what I'm talking about here is using our horse to catapult our characters across the map at ridiculous speeds due to a little glitch known as the horse tilt glitch, which is actually frequently used by speedrunners. Of course, it is pretty pointless outside of speedrunning as you could just fast travel, but it's just hilariously broken and a lot of fun to do. To do it, you just need to mount up on your horse, find a wall about the height of this one outside of Whiterun, tap forward until your horse is basically vertical with its head and neck buried underground, and then dismount your horse and enjoy the show. Results are definitely varied. You can crash the game, that happens a lot. You can be catapulted into the air and die. You can be catapulted above the map and get stuck. You can get a ridiculous speed boost that's borderline impossible to control. I don't really know how speedrunners manage to actually use it, to be honest. Or if you're lucky, you can get this crazy speed boost that I'm showing right now that's a lot more manageable and just seems to persist for the whole of the play session. Though, to be honest, most roads lead to the game crashing. But like I said, it's just a fun way to break the game, which really is the spirit of this video. Speaking of which, if you enjoyed the video, remember to like and subscribe, and of course hit the bell notification, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.